There are a number of ways that you can close the edges of your pillow form. I've chosen to create this scalloped edge because I find that it's easy to do. It creates a nice even join, so you can see that my pieces, even though they're put together in a perpendicular way, are laying pretty flat. And I don't have to worry too much about stitches being ruffled along the edge. So gauge isn't so important when you do this kind of finish on the edge of your pillow project. On the other side, on the back side, here I'll just flip it around. You can see that it's, I think it looks pretty nice and neat here as well. And I've used a contrasting color deliberately to show you, that this kind of border looks exactly the same on the back as it does on the front. And you don't have to be constantly flipping your work around or watching the wrong side of your work in order to get this to lay nice and flat. We will be working with the right side facing, but to begin with, let's start by placing the back panel on top of the front panel. I ran out of this beautiful silver yarn as I was finishing off my back panel, so I have finished it off with a little bit of the blue. And so what I'm going to do here is just lay the blue so that it kind of conforms to this blue corner here, and I'll put my silver at this end, so it lays with the silver on this end. And just to make sure that I've got everything in place, I put my other one down here, so it's going to meet. I want it to meet in the middle. We are going to put a little border on here, so don't worry too much about that, but I want it to meet in the middle. And so once I've got it all laid out here, I'll put a locking stitch marker in each corner just to keep things stable when I flip this over. So I've put a locking stitch marker in each corner, pulling the fabric so that it meets nicely in each corner, and that's just to keep it from wiggling around when I turn it over. So now I'm going to give it a little flip over here, because we want to work with the right side facing. And I'm going to start in the center here. You can see I've already got my yarn established here, but I'll show you how to get started in the beginning. I'm going to start here and work my way along. So what I'm going to do now is repin my pieces. So now I can take this stitch marker away from this corner, and I'm going to just make sure that they're wedged together and that the edges are coming up next to each other. So you may have to uncurl that bound off edge if you've got one there, and just pin it into place. I'm using locking stitch markers, and I'm not pinning right on the edge. I'm pinning below the edge. You can go up or down, whichever way works for you. You just want to, I want to be able to pin the fabric so that it's solid and yet still be able to work in there. So I feel like this locking stitch marker is actually a little too close to my edge. So I'm going to reposition that here. I want to hold the edges of the fabric together as I work along, because again on this side I'm going to be attaching rows to the heads of stitches on this side. And so because I don't want to spend a lot of time counting, I'm going to just make sure that the fabric is sitting together evenly along the edge. And if you have some yarn that is close to the edge, you can kind of like tuck it down in there, and to keep it from popping up, you can, when you put your locking stitch marker in, you can kind of hold it down with the locking stitch marker. That's why it's kind of nice to have a bunch of them handy. So I've got one locking stitch marker over here. I'm just going to continue to work along, and again I just want to make sure that my fabric has no puckers in it. So the more pins you have, the easier it is to make sure that there's no unevenness along here. And I'll pull this pinned to the front as well. If you have even more locking stitch markers, you can continue to put them in along the next corner. But if you just got a few right now, just do one side at a time. All right, and let's get started. For this first piece that I'm about to do, I'm using the same crochet hook, the same size crochet hook as the size of knitting needle used to make my sample. That's been working really well for me along the way. Although I will tell you that in playing around with these edgings, I did experiment with other size crochet hooks, so you can certainly do that as well. I'm also using yarn that is the same kind of yarn that was used to knit my project, but I'm using a contrasting color so that you can see exactly what I'm doing at each step. Now, I do have a loop over here and I will continue to use it, but if you were starting a fresh piece of yarn, what you would do is just insert your hook. Now, we're going to insert your hook and pull the yarn through to make a loop, and I'll do that in a second. But let's just talk about what path we're going to go along. So for this side of my join, I have rows facing me, so I've got the sides of rows here. So basically I have more stitches along this side, or more holes in which to put my crochet hook, than I do on this side over here. Here I've got the heads of stitches. So I'm going to focus solely on the right side of my work. I'm not going to worry too much about the wrong side. I'm just going to keep that edge unrolled and laying flat next to my work as I come along. And so what I'm going to do here is put my hook through the corner of each of these stitches. Now I can always come, like when I come around, I can always fill this in, but if you'd like to start where your join is, that's perfectly fine. So I can stick my hook through here and then through the very corner of the back piece. And if I'm using a fresh piece of yarn, I will just yarn over in the back, pull through everything, and then create one chain. And that's how I'm going to get started. All right, so you've got one loop on your crochet hook, and now we're going to get started in here. So if you've got just one loop on your hook, I want you to just go into the next stitch above that join and put your hook through this. I'm going to put it through this part of the row. Remember, we talked a lot about those edge stitches and how messy they are. So just pick a nice spot to start in. You can just put your hook through that spot and then through the edge of your fabric on the other side. And again, you're going to yarn over and pull through everything that's on your hook. But this time I want you to leave 2 loops on your hook. Once you've got that, then you're going to yarn over one more time. So put your hook under your working yarn and draw it through both loops on your hook. We're going to do that again, and we're going to do it in exactly the same spot. So what we're doing is creating three stitches in one spot to create a little bit of a cluster or shell on the edge of your work. So your hook goes right back into that exact same spot, coming out in the back in exactly the same place as well. Your hook goes under the yarn, and you draw that yarn through to the front so that you have 2 loops on your hook, and then with your hook, yarn under your working yarn and pull through both loops. That's once. Twice. We're going to do it one more time. So hook goes through in exactly the same spot. You bring your hook back up to the front so that you have 2 loops on your hook, and then yarn over and pull through both loops on your hook. So what you've done here is created 3, in North American terms, 3 single crochets, in UK terms, 3 double crochets in the same spot. And now what we want to do is so that shell, in order for that shell to fan out, we're not going to work in the next space on the front or the next space. We're going to go up 3 stitches. So I'm going 1, 2, and putting my hook into the next 3rd stitch up and through the back. And again, I'm not worrying too much about where I'm going through the back. I'm just kind of unrolling that edge and sticking my hook through so it feels like I have about the same amount of fabric on top of each hook. And then with my hook in the back, I'll go under the yarn, pull it through everything so that I have 2 loops on my hook, and then my hook goes under the yarn and I'm going to draw through both of these loops on my hook. And do the same thing again. So hook goes into the same spot, comes out in the same spot on the back. My hook goes under the yarn and I pull through so that I have 2 loops, and then hook goes under the yarn and I pull through those 2 loops. One more time so that I have 3 single crochet or double crochet in the same spot, yarn over and pull through both loops. So I'm skipping 2 stitches, so 2 holes here. Here's where my cluster is. I've got 1, 2 stitches and I'm going into the 3rd stitch. But you may find as you work along that you need to go into every 4th stitch or every 2nd stitch, or maybe you go into every 3rd stitch and then every 4th stitch. So you have the ability to lay it down and keep an eye on it to make sure that it's not puckering or bulging or ruffling as you go along. So you can adjust your tension as you go along, which is one of the really nice things about crochet, is that how immediate it is for fixing things. And again, I'm not worried too much about the back. It seems to, I've gone all the way around half of my pillow form and it doesn't look bad, but I did a lot of peeking back and forth. So I'm going to tell you that you don't have to. Just make sure that you've got about the same amount of fabric under your fingers and carry on. So I feel like I've stopped here for a second to take a look at my work, and I feel like I'm getting a little bit of a wow in my work. And so I'm going to go back to about here, and I'm going to increase the amount of space between my clusters. I'm putting my hook back in the top of the last cluster that I made, and this time instead of going 2 spaces, 1, 2, 3, I'm going to go 4. So I'm again not doing anything before I enter that stitch, just putting my crochet hook through, pulling that yarn back and going through the 2 loops, 2, 3, and then I'll try that again. So 1, 2, 3, and this time I'm going in the 4th hole. And there's where my stitch is, 1, 2, 3, 4. Sometimes on this dark yarn it's a little bit hard to see. You just do the best you can. And then I'll lay it down and have another look. So yeah, I think to me that's sitting a little nicer along the edge. So I'm going to continue to do it 4 stitches apart, or in every 4th stitch up. But again, if I feel like it's getting too tight, remember that you can alternate between the number of spaces that you're working. That's allowed. Now I'm approaching the corner, and what I want to do is place a cluster right in the tip of the corner. So here I don't have enough spaces to put my next cluster 3 stitches away from where it is here. So I'm just going to pop it into the middle of this space. So if I want to put my last or my corner cluster here, I'm going to put my second last cluster right about here. It's not the right number of stitches away, but it's the halfway mark and it'll do. And so I'm just going to pop my 3 stitches right there so that I can put one in the corner and it will feel like it's equally distanced apart. When I go into the corner, I want to do exactly the same thing as before. I'm just going to put my hook under the edge of the corner on both the front and back piece, find a spot that kind of works for both of them, right? Just trying to get the very edge of both pieces. I've got my loop on my hook. I'm going to yarn over with the crochet hook and pull it through everything that's on the hook, and then yarn over and pull through both loops. And then I'm going to do that again, going through the same space. And sometimes I will tilt it over just to make sure that the hook is coming out in the back exactly where it was the previous time. And I'll do another stitch and then one more in the corner. So each corner gets a cluster of 3, just like before, but one of those stitches will kind of slant towards the right, the one on the furthest edge will slant towards the left, and the one in the middle will point out towards the edge. And now I'm going to turn my work and reposition my locking stitch markers along this edge here. I might go all the way down if I can, so that I don't have to stop midway, but you can do that. You can reposition them as you will. I'm going to put one more locking stitch marker in right here. And I'm now working on the heads of stitches on the front side, and on the back side I'm working with rows. So I'm not going to worry too much about how many rows I'm attaching to each stitch along the front. I want to keep it much more simple than that. And so I'm going to work by just focusing on the heads of stitches here in the front. And I'll show you what I mean by that and where it is I'm going to go. So I've just rounded the corner here. I've put my 3, oh wait, 1, 2, I undid one. So I'm going to put my third crochet stitch back here in the corner. So I've got 3 stitches in the corner. And when I'm working in the heads of stitches, I'm going to work in every 3rd stitch. Because I've got this kind of like a little blippy thing here, I'm going to begin a little closer to the corner than I will in between my stitches, just because I want to tack that down. So I'm looking at these stitches. I'm looking at these stitches as V's, and I think if you can see right between my thumbs, I've got one V of a stitch. So that's one stitch column here, and here's the second stitch column. So to get started after the corner, I'm going to work in the second stitch column and then every 3rd stitch thereafter. By working in the stitch, what I mean is that I'm not trying to put my crochet hook under the edge of my cast on chain. I'm looking at putting my crochet hook right through the middle of the topmost stitch. So I'm taking my crochet hook, and where there's a V here, I'm putting it right in the middle, and I'm poking it through to the back side. And I'll have a quick peek at where I am on the back and say to myself, okay, I've got about the same amount of fabric on the front to the back, or I could adjust it a little bit to bring it up a little bit more. So on the back, my hook is coming out in between the second last and the last column, and that's what I'm going to kind of aim for. I'm not worried about how many stitches down that is, just where in terms of the line that I'm creating it's coming out. Okay, so my hook's going through the middle of the stitch on the front and in between 2 columns on the back, and now I'm going to take my hook and go under the yarn and pull the yarn through to the front and just angle it up a little bit so that it's sitting on top of my join. I've got 2 loops on my crochet hook, so I'm going to go under the yarn with my crochet hook and pull through both loops that are on the crochet hook. Now I just have 1. And again, I'm going to go through this spot a second time, but I just want to show you close up here how I've gone into the middle of that stitch. That was where I wanted to go. So I'm going to go back into the same spot, front and back, pull my yarn up so that I have 2 loops, yarn over and pull through both those loops. And I'm going to do that one more time just to create a 3-stitch cluster right along the edge there. Okay, and now that I've got this cluster in here along my edge, I'm now going to work in the next, in the third stitch over. So here's the stitch or the column that I've worked in, and I'm going to go 1, 2, and look at the third column, and again put my hook right in the center of that stitch, pop it out through the back, and I'm just going to lift it up and make sure I'm in the same track. And so here I can see I've come down one column, so I'm just going to pull it back a little bit and put it into the same ditch in the back that I had previously. And that's all I'm going to check on the back. And again, I'm going to put 3 single crochets, American terminology, or 3 double crochets, UK terminology, in that third stitch column over. And now I'm going to count over 3 more stitches. So here's where I worked. 1, 2, I'm going to work in the third column over. And again, I'm just peeking through to the back just to make sure I'm in the right row there. And then I'll put 3 crochet stitches right here. And then again, count 2 stitches over. 1, 2, 3. Quick peek in the back just to make sure my stitches are lined up along the edge. And 3 in here. And okay, keep going. As I near the center divide, I'm thinking about whether or not I'd like my next fan to be centered right here, or if it's okay to have one on either side. And sometimes, you know, you can't decide until you do it. So feel free to kind of, you know, experiment and see what looks good. And just make sure I'm on the same spot in the back. So I'm going to try one here. I feel like it's going to be too far away, but you don't know until you try. Yeah, I just feel like there's like a bit of a hole here. So I'm going to pull this back to where I last was and continue on by going 1 or 2 over. So I've got 1, 2, my third one should be here, but I think I'm going to put it here midway just because I want it to be kind of balanced over the center, my center bar here. And there's nothing saying I couldn't just put 1 single crochet chain in there. Let me just see what that looks like. Yeah, I think I might just leave that there. I'm going to always pull it back. And let's take a look at the next section. So I've gone halfway down, I'm at my middle point, and now the direction of my block has changed. I'm now working along rows, and on the back I also have rows. And so I'm going to do what I did before, which was to work into every 4th row, every 4th stitch along the row. And again, I'm going to do what I did before, which is just to make sure I'm continuing along in the same spot that I was doing back here. And I see I reached down a little further here. If you look at the back side, I just want to keep that one row kind of nice and neat along here. And here I went down too far. So I'll pull this one back and I'll put it back in. And this time I'll take a look here at the back to make sure I'm getting it in the right spot. There we go. Pull it through. And this one I just did a single chain, so that's fine. I'm going to put my next cluster a little closer to the bottom just to match over here. So 1, 2, I think I'll start in the 3rd stitch up, and on the back side I just want to make sure I'm going in a straight line here. And I'll put 1 cluster in. And then this time I'll count up 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to put it in the 4th stitch up, and just making sure I'm maintaining a straight line in the back. And I'll keep working on like that along the back here. Well, once again, I've rounded my corner and I'm about to work across my final side of my front, joining my front and back together. And for me, this side is the heads of stitches against the heads of stitches. So I've got them pinned together and I'm going to work again across the front, working in every third column. So this column is occupied, if you will, and so I'm going to go 1, 2, third column over. But again, because this corner is a little wonky, I'm going to move one in just like I did before. And again, I'm going to put my hook right in the middle of this V, and I'm going to pop it over to the other side, and I'm not going to worry too much about where it's coming through on the other side as long as it's underneath the bound off edge. And I'm going to yarn over and pull that through so that I have 2 loops on my hook, and I'll make my first crochet stitch and then back through exactly the same spot to make my second, and one more time in the same spot to make my third shell. And then I'm going to go, for my gauge, I'm going to go every third column over. So 1, 2, 3, pop it through. And again, just make sure that it's coming in underneath the bound off edge or cast off edge on the other side. And I'll put my 3 clusters in there. Now you could be more precise on the back side with where you're putting your hook through, but I find, you know, this shell stitch covers over nicely. So as long as you're kind of aiming for the same spot on the back, it should be fine. When you get to the end and you're back to where your starting yarn is, you're just going to cut your yarn and release your loop, and we'll finish that up after we've done, when we're weaving in all the ends.